Hello once again. We've got one more lab, and it's a doozy, with electricity. This lab, you're going to be building series circuits in differing sizes and making measurements on all of the different components that you put in. Just resistors. We'll be keeping it simple for that. And then by the end, drawing conclusions about how series circuits work. We'll also be looking at a different type of circuit, a parallel circuit. In series circuits, you're used to having just one big loop for all of the components, and electrons would have to flow through that loop in order to get from the negative side of the battery to the positive side. In a parallel circuit, we'll have different branches, and I'll demonstrate both so that you can see them. I've also broken it up into several different pieces, which I'll show you right now, so that you can take little chunks out of this throughout the week. So I haven't added these to Schoology yet, but there will be these quizzes that you can see here. The first part, experiment part 1 and analysis part 1, are actually on the series circuit. So this video will cover them. So the experiment part 1 takes you to this. It's got a lot of instruction in here, and your answer will once again be a big data table with your experimental data in it. And there's some reminders in here, but I'm just going to take you through in video form how to construct this. Now, we're practicing a lot of communication skills during our distance learning here. A table is a big tool for communicating information. And so I'm going to show you some of the ways that I did this that has different size cells in it and different amounts of information that are linked to it. So I'm going to go over to my Google Drive and make a new Google Sheet right here. First thing we're going to do, our first column is just going to keep track of which circuit number we're going to be working with, and that will also be how many resistors we've got in it. I know, because I'd set it up previously, that I actually want 2 rows here for my headers. So I'm going to go down here because this first column is just about circuit. Just which number circuit are we going to do? We're going to start with circuit number 1. Now, our first measurement in this is going to be what resistors do we include in the circuit. And by what resistors, I mean what is their value. So I'm going to title this one resistors in, and then go down to the next cell, circuit. And we have to put what units we are measuring them in. Ohms. Now, there are a couple of measurements that I want you to make on each component. One of them is voltage in volts. One of them is current in amps. In these circuits, you're going to be adding increasingly many resistors, but you'll only ever have one battery. That means for each circuit, we need to measure the battery once, and we need to measure each resistor once. There's a lot to keep track of in there. So these first 2 columns here, I'm actually going to say these are just for the battery. So whatever we put under here, this will be battery voltage. Whatever we put under here, this will be the current coming out of the battery. That means that I want both of those to refer to the battery. So I could put the word battery here and battery here, but it's maybe a little more visually pleasing just to have it across both. So I selected these, clicked on the first one, held my mouse button down until the second one was selected. And I'm going to go up to Format, and I'm going to merge these cells. I can just merge all. And now when I type in it, it actually means both of them. I'm going to set up the same sort of thing over here for my resistors. I'm going to merge these 2 and put resistors, and then my voltage in volts, and my current in amps. Now this gets a little bit clunky. You notice my number that I put in for the circuit is already, it's out of place. It would be very hard if I've got a whole list of numbers here to remember, all right, which one does each go with. So I want to highlight all of these columns by clicking on A, holding the mouse button down, going through F, and then going through and saying center. Now it's going to be a lot easier for me to build this. I do also want to differentiate my headings from my values down here. And I'll do this for each circuit as well. So I want to put a nice bold line under that. So I highlighted all of those cells, go over to my borders tool, and let's put a border there to make sure that it's easy to spot the difference between. Now I'm going to run you through 1 and a little bit of circuit 2. So I'm going to pop over into our circuit construction, and I realize yep, had already had something on there. So start with a blank slate. We want our first circuit, we want 1 battery, and we'll always keep 1 battery, and just 1 resistor. Now in here, make sure that you select that. We can set any resistance we want. I'm going to start with 10 ohms, and you'll be building this circuit up through the different trials until you finally make measurements on circuit with 5 different resistors. It's okay to have 2 of these that are the same, but all the rest should be changed down here. So you could have 2 10 ohms and then 3 different, altogether different ones to make your measurements on. I do want to make a note though that I'm using a 10 ohm resistor in here. And so that goes right in this resistors and circuit. There's this a 10 ohm. Now remember, in a table we don't put our units down with these values. The units are already listed up top. Putting them down here just adds clutter to our table, so we don't actually have to do it there. I'm going to finish off my circuit, and then I'm going to make some voltage and current measurements. So finish it off just by dragging in some wires. And as soon as these are all connected, current starts flowing. I want to make 2 measurements, a voltage measurement and a current measurement. So I'm going to bring out my voltage tool and my current tool. Voltage, remember I wanted to measure on the battery, so I'm going to just bring the probes over to the side, and I see I get 9 volts. So let's go record that. I also wanted to measure the current, so I'm going to bring in the current, the ammeter here, and just hold it right after the battery. So I see 0.90 amps. I'm going to put that as my battery current, 0.9. If I put the extra 0 here, it's just going to truncate it. So I don't usually have to do that in our case. Now I also want to make a voltage and current measurement for my resistor, and each of my resistors, it just happens to be 1 in this case. So I'm going to move all of these tools up so the probes go on the 2 ends. I get 9 volts for that resistor. And then over here, the current, I want to measure the current right before my resistor. And that'll be the case even when I have multiple resistors, measure it right before each resistor. I get 0.9. Again, so we see in the simplest circuit that all the voltage that the battery supplies is being used up or dropped across, is what we often call it, the resistor. So that's why these two have the same voltage. This is how much is being supplied. This is how much is being converted into some other form of energy, in this case, heat. And then the amount of current was the same. So that's all I have to do for my first circuit. So since I'm finished with that, I'm going to highlight those and put a bold line across the bottom with the same tool. And then I'm going to move on to circuit 2. And in circuit 2, I'm going to add an additional resistor. I'll keep my 10 ohm resistor. Now let's add another one. So to add another one, I'll take my measurements off. I'm going to remove 1 wire, and then I'm going to put another resistor in. And you could put it side by side like that. It's fine. I'm going to put it a little separated just to make sure I can show you all of the different tools. Drag a wire in there and do another one. Let's do it like that. And we see that the current is flowing again. I'm going to actually change this one. It would be okay to have 2 10 ohm resistors, but only 2. Any additional ones you'd have to change. And it is a good idea to have 2, but I want to demonstrate how to change it. So I'm going to pull this up to, let's make it 25 ohms. Any number here is actually fine as long as it's not the exact same as multiple others. Okay, so my second one here is a 25 ohm resistor. Now I'm going to have to make, I only have one battery in here, so I'm still only going to make one measurement. This circuit too actually refers to both of these resistors. So in order to make it more visually obvious how these go together, I actually am going to combine those two cells in one using that same merge command, except this time, yeah, I can just do merge all. And I'm going to only make one measurement for voltage, so I'm going to merge those two. And I'm going to merge those two. When I make these measurements, I'll get a number and it'll be 9 volts again, because that hasn't changed. The current will be different. But you notice whenever I put a number in here, these are down at the bottom, and that's not a very attractive way, and it's a little bit confusing that it doesn't really say that it goes with both of these. So if I highlight both of these, and I'm just going to highlight all of them, I can actually center them vertically as well using this vertical align tool. Pause just one sec here. And now it's a little clear that it refers to all of them. So I'd come back to my diagram, I'd make my voltage measurement. So just to confirm, 9 volts. I'd make my current measurement by dragging this right in here, and that would be my battery current right there. And then I'm going to move on to each of my resistors. These first two cells refer to my first resistor, my 10 ohm resistor. So I'm going to make the voltage measurement across that 10 ohm resistor by putting my probes up in those circles. And then I want to make the current measurement right before it. So insert it right here. And I would record those two values in these cells. I want to make the same measurements for my resistor, my 25 ohm resistor. Goes right here. So I'd take my probe over here, and then I'd move my current probe right before it as well to measure that and record those here. And once I did, I would finish off with this circuit. So I would add the border, move on to circuit 3, which in my case, I would have a 10 ohm, a 25 ohm, and add another one, maybe it's another 10, and make those measurements. And you notice now this 3 has to refer to all 3 of these, so I'd go up and format and merge the cells again. I'll still only have one battery measurement, so I'll go up and merge those cells and merge these 2 as well, or 3 as well. Making measurements, I just want to make sure when I'm measuring the voltage and the current, this is measured on the 25 ohm resistor. This one would be measured on my other 10 ohm resistor, and when I finish it up, go ahead and put the line on. So you're going to continue this. Oh, and I forgot, I can center them. An easy way to do this right at the beginning, remember that we centered them using this tool. We can also just center them with that, and that centers all of them in the middle. Keep going on. So now we'll have circuit 4, circuit 5. Just making sure that I have 2 10 ohm resistors right now. I won't have any more 10 ohms, and I won't have any more 25 ohms. The pair of 10s is great. That tells us a lot, but then we want to do different sizes. You could do smaller than 10, you could do bigger than 10. That doesn't matter. And then fill this out. When you're all done with it, select the whole thing, copy it, come back to our answer, and then you'll paste it as your answer here. Okay, the